In each person exist two worlds, the world we perform outwardly and the silent world operating inwardly, where all causes, all conflicts, and all miracles of transformation are concealed. We spend our entire lives searching for motivation, discipline, and improvement, but few realize every effort to change externally is meaningless if within us remains chaos, obscurity, and misunderstanding. Improvement is not a race to outdo others, but the courage to confront our own shadow, the dwelling place of fear, anger, desire, and the parts we disown. Jung once said, "Until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives, and we will call it fate." Forcing oneself to upgrade every day is not a call to compel oneself toward perfection, but an invitation to embark on the soul's journey, which Jung termed the process of individuation, a slow, solitary, yet authentic path to becoming oneself. Thus, true change arises not from grand actions, but from small, repeated acts of courage, daring to gaze inward, even when what we behold terrifies us. So, what would happen if you truly did that? If you compel yourself to confront rather than flee, to listen rather than fill the void, to become conscious day by day, would you still be the person you are today? In today's video, you will discover that forcing oneself to improve every day is not a flight from weaknesses, but a confrontation with the inner shadow. You will understand why procrastination, fear, or stumbles are not failures, but signals from the soul, beckoning you deeper into the process of transformation. Therefore, take a deep breath. From this moment, we will speak not of discipline or motivation, but of awakening, where each day ceases to be a battle to be better and becomes a journey toward greater honesty. Number 1. Improvement is not growth, but digging deep. We often imagine personal development as a straight upward path, where each day we must know more, perform better, and achieve more than yesterday. But for Carl Jung, that is merely an illusion of the ego, which forever seeks to inflate, dominate, and affirm its worth through accomplishments. In truth, the soul's evolution does not ascend. It descends, not outward, but inward. Improvement is not about adding, but digging deep, not expanding knowledge, but touching the profound layers of awareness. This digging deep is not comfortable. It demands we dare to gaze directly at the parts of ourselves we once denied, the fear of abandonment, envy, feelings of worthlessness, uncontrolled rage. All that Jung called the shadow, the dark side. This shadowed half is the repressed remainder of us, confined to the unconscious. And the irony is, the more we attempt self-development by suppressing it, the stronger it grows. Like trying to submerge a ball under water, the harder we press, the more fiercely it rebounds. Consider someone who strives to be positive at all times. They read books on mindset, practice daily gratitude, and always say, "I'm fine." But then a single criticism, an unexpected failure, and it all crumbles. For behind that smile lurks a profound, buried fear, never squarely faced. Positivity, unexamined by the shadow, is like a thin glaze, gleaming briefly, prone to cracking under life's blows. Jung would say, "You cannot become whole if you stand only in the light. You must learn to step into the darkness of your own soul." Digging deep means daring to sit with oneself in that darkness. It is when you cease asking, "How can I be happier?" and begin to ask, "Why do I fear sadness?" It is when you realize that bad habits, procrastination, or unease are not enemies, but the language of the unconscious, striving to communicate something to you. Someone who chronically procrastinates, for instance, may harbor a deep fear of failure, rooted in childhood, where love came only with perfection, high scores. They are not lazy, they are afraid. And when we halt the self-blame and begin to listen to that fear, we do not merely improve behavior, we touch the root of ourselves. Improvement is not upgrading versions, but liberating energy trapped in the unconscious. Jung believed that within each of us flows a vital energy, libido, but much of it is repressed in wounds, memories, or roles we assume for acceptance. When we dare to dig deep, revisit, and reconcile with those parts, that energy returns. We no longer need to motivate ourselves, for the natural life instinct within us begins to flow anew. Imagine the mind as an ancient house. Surface development is painting walls, decorating, and beautifying the parlor for others to see. But digging deep is descending to the basement, where locked rooms brim with memories, images, emotions we dare not unlock. That house cannot stand firm if its foundation rots. Thus, rather than racing to the upper floors, Jung invites us downward. Each door we open reveals a memory, a pain, an old version once forsaken. Each time we dare to open it, the house of the soul grows more solid, expansive, luminous, not by adding the new, but by reclaiming the forgotten. Therefore, improving each day is not about listing another skill, habit, or lesson. It is, each day, daring to be a little more honest. Daring to admit what you never dared utter. Daring to drop the role of fine before others. Daring to behold your reactions without judgment. That is when you are digging deep. And that is when the truth within you begins to heal. Improvement is not about climbing higher than others. It is digging deep enough to touch oneself. When you dare to stare into the mess, accept the imperfect human within, you cease being ruled by fear. When you stop striving to be better and start to understand more deeply, you will find peace not in the destination, but in each layer you uncover within your own mind. Number 2. Don't seek inspiration. Observe the shadow. Once you grasp that improvement is not about climbing higher, but digging into yourself, this journey leads you to another realm, where the light of reason no longer suffices to illuminate. There, you encounter a figure you have long ignored, your own shadow. And this is where the next step begins. We live in an era that worships inspiration. Everyone speaks of maintaining positive energy, self-motivating, and waking each day with a fighting spirit. But Jung would smile and say, "No, don't seek inspiration. Observe your own lethargy, for it is precisely in the absence of light that the shadow tells you a story." Inspiration is like fire. It can blaze brilliantly, but it flickers out when life's winds shift. The shadow, what we always evade, is a deeper, more enduring source of energy. It holds the buried unconscious, the desires, fears, and potentials our conscious mind has yet to recognize. The shadow is not the enemy, it is the disowned part of us, and only when we dare to see it do we truly understand ourselves. Consider someone who procrastinates, grows discouraged easily, or lazes about. On the surface, they need motivation, but truly, the issue lies not in lacking inspiration, but in not yet seeing the shadow, the fear of judgment, self-doubt about worth, or the sense that no one will acknowledge me anyway. If we merely pump in more energy without grasping the underlying fear, we are inflating a punctured balloon. It may swell briefly, but soon deflates. Jung said the shadow does not vanish when ignored. It hides and manipulates us from within. like a puppet imagining freedom, yet every move is controlled by invisible strings called the unconscious. When you rage without knowing why, envy with shame for the feeling, laugh to mask hurt, that is the shadow acting through you. And if you never see it, you live a lifetime directed by the very parts you dare not admit. Observing the shadow does not mean judging it, but learning to converse with it. For example, when envy arises for another's success, instead of tormenting yourself with, "How wretched I am," try asking, "What in them touches the unlived part within me?" Perhaps you crave the freedom you renounced, or a dream buried out of fear of ridicule. In the moment you dare to inquire, the shadow's energy begins to release. Here, if an image gently knocks at your door, do not hold it alone. Place the first pebble on the path homeward with a single short sentence in the comments, beginning with, "I see my shadow when." One sentence alone suffices to recognize the way back tomorrow. A real-world example. Steve Jobs was renowned for perfectionism, temper, and even ruthlessness. But in those shadow moments, the obsession with detail, fear of failure, thirst for control, he transmuted that energy into radiant, creative light. The shadow is not for erasure, but transformation. When we dare to observe, darkness becomes fuel for awakening. In Jungian psychology, this is called the integration of the shadow. We do not destroy it, but learn to bring it into the light of consciousness. For only by seeing the contradictions within ourselves do we attain wholeness. One who strives to appear good, gentle, perfect, is often ruled by a shadow of repressed anger, power, or desire. And when those parts go unseen, they erupt in distorted forms, like emotional explosions, burnout, or a hollow sense of meaninglessness. Instead of striving to maintain positive energy, try sitting with your negative emotions. When sad, do not rush to upbeat music. When angry, do not breathe to extinguish it. Observe. Ask where it comes from. Sometimes a single non-judgmental gaze reveals what the soul needs: to be heard, acknowledged, and loved without effort. This is what Jung called the alchemy of the soul. The alchemist does not create gold from nothing. They transmute base metal into something more precious. Likewise, when you confront the shadow, you do not eradicate it. You transform it into creative power and insight. If you wish to practice this, dedicate 3 days solely to observing one recurring emotion: anger, sadness, envy, without trying to change it. Just note when it appears. That is the first exercise in making the unconscious conscious. Number 3. Discipline is structure, but the soul is the substance. Here you will realize something. Understanding alone does not change a person. We may clearly see our fears, identify wounds, comprehend the origins of every emotion, but without a structure to support it, all that insight dissolves in life's chaos. And this is where discipline enters, not as a whip to drive, but as a framework giving the soul shape to mature. If you observe your mind, you will see it in constant motion. Emotions shift, thoughts come and go, and energy ebbs and flows. The soul, in Jung's view, is not stable like a machine, but fluid, flexible, and brimming with feeling. Thus, it requires an external structure to anchor it. Like an artist needs a canvas to paint, water a riverbed to flow. Without structure, the soul's energy spills and dissipates. With structure but no soul, every action becomes empty, like music without sound. Consider meditation, journaling, or morning exercise. These are not for upgrading oneself, but rituals connecting to your depths. When you sit to jot down emotions, even a few lines, you give your soul concrete form. When you meditate, you create space for the mind to still and the unconscious to speak. That is discipline, but discipline infused with soul. Many confuse discipline with coercion. They think it means rigidity, ceaseless toil, and controlling every emotion. But Jung understood that forcing oneself is no different from forcing the soul into an alien shape. True discipline does not harden us, it softens us, for only with a firm frame can we relax within. One who practices piano daily does so not from duress, but because in the structure of practice, their musical soul finds freedom to express. In psychological terms, discipline is the ego's function, to arrange, organize, and execute. The soul, or unconscious, is the psyche, the source of vital, creative, emotional energy. If the ego dominates, we become rigid, obsessed with performance. If the ego is weak, we drift in chaos, swept by feelings. True maturity arrives when the ego learns to serve the soul rather than rule it. A real-world example. Someone rises each morning to force a successful routine borrowed from others, up at 5 a.m., meditates, reads, gym. Yet inside they feel empty, for they do it to prove worth, not to listen to themselves. They have structure, but no soul. Conversely, one who acts only when inspired, letting emotions dictate, has soul, but no structure. Both are lost. Structure without soul is a body without heart. Soul without structure is wind without direction. Jung once said that the soul needs form as water needs a vessel. Pour water out and it evaporates. But place it in the right container, and it does not diminish. It reflects the entire sky. Discipline is that vessel. And when we find the true shape for our own, not another's, the soul begins to shine. Remember, discipline is not checking off a list, but keeping promises to oneself. Each repeated action is your way of telling the soul, I respect you. I am here to listen to you each day. Whether 10 minutes of meditation, 15 of reading, or 5 of silent gazing, it is a door you open for the unconscious to enter. And from there, discipline ceases to be duty. It becomes a sacred rite of presence. Jung once said, we cannot change anything unless we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. Discipline is how you accompany your soul, patiently, steadily, respectfully, without possession. And if you need a way to begin, try the 14-30-90 formula. For the first 14 days, choose the smallest ritual, 10 minutes journaling, 5 sitting still, or a moment silently watching the sky. No need to comprehend, just be present. For the next 30 days, observe the resisting emotions, boredom, fatigue, sadness, the urge to quit. Note them, without judgment. This is when the shadow of control and expectation reveals itself. After 90 days, you will not feel more perfect, but softer, more real. Habits become a structure for the soul to dwell in, not to coerce, but to nurture. And then, once you have learned to be present with your soul, you will begin to hear a different rhythm resounding from within. It is the call inviting you further, beyond discipline and habit, into the deepest journey Jung ever spoke of, the journey to become oneself. Number 4. Individuation. Individuation is not about becoming special, nor is it about becoming the best version of yourself, as society preaches. Jung said that individuation is the process by which a person gradually separates from the illusions, roles, and expectations unconsciously carried from others to become a unified whole, where the ego, shadow, soul, and unconscious merge as one. In other words, it is the journey in which you give birth to yourself a second time. From the moment of birth, we begin to lose ourselves. We learn to be obedient to be loved, to be strong to avoid hurt, to please to be recognized. Each role helps us survive, but simultaneously strips away pieces of our true selves. The ego grows not as a center of clarity, but as a mask, beautiful, bright, but hollow. Jung called that mask the persona, the social face we use to adapt, but which also causes us to forget who we are when no one is watching. Individuation begins when you dare to remove that mask, when you stop asking, "What do others want from me?" and start asking, "What does my soul want?" It is not a heroic moment, but a long series of silent nights where you confront the inner voices, the voice of the wounded child, of the parts you once disowned, of the dreams never lived. And when you listen, you realize all those fragments want to return, to make you more whole. Imagine if one morning you woke up with nothing left to prove, no titles, no one observing. Would you still know who you are? Would you still know what truly makes you alive? Or would you be disoriented because, for so long, you have existed only through others' eyes? Let that question rest in your mind for a moment, because sometimes the silence after the question is where the soul softly speaks. In psychoanalytic therapy, Jung described individuation as a spiral movement. Each time you confront a part in the shadow, reconcile with it, your consciousness expands another loop. But this expansion does not ascend straight like advancement, but delves deeper into the psyche like tree roots into the earth, the deeper, the more stable. And the paradox of this journey is, you do not become someone, but return to being yourself. Look around. How many people live without truly living? They work, laugh, and achieve success, but inside feel empty. They attain everything society worships, yet still sense something missing. Jung said that it is the symptom of an abandoned soul. When the ego races too fast toward external goals, it forgets its inner companion, the soul. And when the soul is not heard, it rebels, with emptiness, with crises, with unexplained depressions. It is not life against you, but the soul reclaiming its place. One on the path of individuation no longer sees crises as enemies, but as birth rituals. Job loss, heartbreak, failure, no longer endpoints, but doors. For each time a part of us collapses, another is called forth to be reborn. Like a snake shedding its skin to grow, you too must let the old ego die for the soul to be born. For example, someone spends their life pleasing parents, chasing the image of the good child, successful person. One day, everything crumbles, they lose direction, and fall into depression. But in that darkness, they begin to hear their true voice. They love painting, enjoy solitude, and prefer a slow life. They start living to their own rhythm, not to please anyone, but to become themselves. That is not a crisis. It is individuation. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But that privilege is not granted. It must be reclaimed day by daring to confront yourself, daring to leave the crowd, to do the opposite of what is deemed right, to live to the soul's own rhythm." Individuation has no endpoint. It is an unending journey, where each day you understand yourself a little more, accept another part, and love another fragment of the soul. You no longer need to improve yourself as a project, but live as a flow, fierce yet serene, utterly real. And that is the freedom every inward journey seeks. The freedom to be oneself, without needing to become anyone else. Then, you no longer ask, how to change my life? For you understand that life changes the moment you become authentic with yourself. Number 5. Observe your dreams. As you begin walking the path of individuation, you will notice something strange. The more you understand yourself, confront the shadow and soul deeply, the more you are guided by a force more mysterious than reason, a language without words, without logic, but rich in symbols and emotions. That world is not out there, but right within you, appearing each time you close your eyes. And that is where the unconscious speaks. In dreams, Jung once said, "The dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul." He did not see dreams as random fragments of the mind, but as messages from the unconscious, delivered in the language of symbols, metaphors, and emotions. While by day we live by reason, at night the unconscious takes hold, and the soul begins to tell its own story. Dreams do not tell you what to do, but who you are. They are honest mirrors, reflecting what we have yet to recognize. When you dream of running endlessly without reaching the end, it may not just be a nightmare, but an image of your current life, caught in loops of expectation and fear. When you dream of falling into an abyss, it may be the mind inviting you to release control. When you encounter an old lover in a dream, the soul may be reminding you that a part of the past remains unreconciled. Jung believed the unconscious is not merely a repository of forgotten memories, but a source of profound creativity and wisdom. The unconscious does not speak the language of reason, but of symbols, what Jung called the language of the soul. A snake in a dream is not just a snake. It may be an image of primal energy, of rebirth. A storm is not just weather, but a symbol of inner chaos, signaling impending change. The important thing is not decoding dreams like dreaming of money means you'll get rich, but learning to dialogue with the symbols. Each symbol holds a different meaning for each person, for our unconscious is unique. Jung often advised those on the inner development path to record their dreams each morning, not to analyze, but to listen to the unconscious like a friend. For example, a woman in Jung's therapy repeatedly dreamed of an old house with a basement. Each time she descended deeper, from the living room to the basement, then one time to a dark room with a small box. When Jung asked how she felt, she said, "I'm afraid, but also curious." After many sessions, she realized the house was an image of her mind, and the box a buried memory from childhood, where she witnessed a loss she never dared speak of. When she dared to open the box in the dream and in her heart, she began to feel true relief. The dream had led her, layer by layer, into the house of her own soul. Dreams are the silent guides of the individuation journey. They offer pieces the conscious mind dares not touch. Each dream is the unconscious trying to help us become more whole. You may dream of returning to your old school, meeting the child from your past. That is no coincidence. It is your inner child demanding to be seen, loved, and heard. Instead of seeking answers outside, try stepping into your own dream world. Each morning, before the phone pulls you from the inner realm, record what you remember. Do not try to understand immediately. Just observe. Let the symbols gradually come alive in memory. you will be surprised to see them connect to real life, choices, relationships, emotions you once overlooked. Dreams do not say, "Do this." They only ask, "Are you living true to yourself?" If you want to begin dialoguing with dreams, upon waking, write down the first 3 images you recall, without interpretation. Then, note the dream's main emotion. After 14 days, read them back, and you will see recurring themes like invisible threads between dreams. That is the map of the unconscious, gradually taking shape. Jung believed that if you listen to dreams long enough, the soul will lead you. For dreams are the map of the unconscious, where archetypes, the mother, the hero, the wanderer, the wise one, send messages for your life's journey. In understanding dreams, you not only understand yourself, but also how all of humanity operates within you. But there is a strange moment after each awakening. You open your eyes, look around, and suddenly the world seems as ethereal as the dream just dissolved. The faces, goals, titles, bustle, all so real that we forget they are but a thin veil over the soul. After the night's dream draws us inward, the day's dream sweeps us outward. And right at that intersection, Jung's question echoes like an awakening. Are we living, or merely dreaming in another form of illusion? Number 6. Detaching from illusions and accepting impermanence. What is illusion? It is all those things we believe will give us value, but in reality only distance us from ourselves. Status, success, perfection, or even the idea of a happy life painted by the media. The ego is very skilled at creating those images. It wants us to be busy to avoid facing emptiness, wants us to always be chasing to feel enough. But Jung points out that every effort to control and cling arises from fear. Fear of impermanence, fear of loss, fear of death. If you observe closely, you will see illusions everywhere, in identifying ourselves with our jobs, relationships, appearance, or numbers on social media. When those things change, we collapse because we think we ourselves disappear. But that is only the ego's illusion. The soul, the deeper part of you, does not vanish. It is only waiting for you to awaken from the dream called control. Just as in nature, everything operates in cycles: birth, stability, decay, death. But modern humans want to keep everything in a state of eternally good. We want to hold on to love, youth, job, the image of ourselves as someone on the rise. And when the flow of life forces change, we resist. But Jung believed that all suffering is the consequence of not accepting impermanence. A real example: someone spends their life reaching the peak of their career. Then one day they are forced to retire. No more title, no more admiring looks, they fall into depression. But what they mourn is not the job, it's the illusion of self. The ego, once identified with the position, now dissolves, and they feel like they no longer exist. But if they look deeper, they will see that behind that loss is the opportunity for the true soul to breathe, to live without straining to prove anything. In the Jungian view, this stage is called the afternoon of life. When passing the midpoint, one must look back at the illusions that nourished youth. Jung wrote, "We cannot live the afternoon of life according to the program of life's morning. For what was great in the morning will be little at evening, and what in the morning was true will at evening have become a lie. The ego lives by accumulation, the soul by letting go." If the morning of life is time to build, the afternoon is time to dismantle. And only when we accept impermanence do we truly mature. Detaching from illusions does not mean renouncing the material world or denying joy, but living in the world without being ruled by it. Like the Zen master watching flowers fall without pain, because he knows the beauty of the flower lies not in its eternal existence, but in the moment it falls. Authentic, complete, unattached. Perhaps this is the moment to pause a little. Try looking around the room you're sitting in. Things you own, images you keep, things you think you cannot lose. Among them, how many truly belong to you, and how many are just extensions of an ego afraid of being forgotten? Let that question quiet for a beat. Then, if you wish, share in the comments what you just realized when looking at your own illusions. Who knows, in the moment you write it down, that illusion may begin to dissolve. In modern psychology, this is conscious detachment, not indifference. It is the ability to observe emotions, circumstances, and people without letting them define your worth. When you can look at a failure without seeing it as, "I failed." When you can accept a loss without thinking, "My life is collapsing," then you have touched the freedom Jung called wholeness. Try looking at the crises you have experienced. Perhaps they did not come to destroy you, but to destroy the illusions you cling to. Each time something collapses, a relationship, a belief, an image of self, that is the unconscious clearing the way for you to live more truly, lightly, freely. Impermanence is not the enemy of happiness, but the condition for happiness to exist. If flowers did not fade, we would not see their beauty. If the day did not end, we would not know the night. If life did not change, we would never awaken. Jung once said that the soul does not seek stability, it seeks meaning. And meaning only appears when we dare to accept that everything is temporary, including ourselves. This is the subtlest turning point on the inward journey, when we realize that ultimately what needs to be let go is not the world, but the comparison that separates us from our true self. Number 7. No more comparison, only you with your deepest self. Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." This sounds paradoxical, because all our lives we think we are living to do that. But the truth is that most of us never truly live for ourselves. We live in others' images, compare ourselves to them, then forget that our life has no duplicate. The mechanism of comparison arises from the ego, the self, always afraid of being left behind, always wanting to prove worth. When you see someone more successful, more beautiful, happier, the ego immediately feels threatened. But for Jung, that is only a confusion of consciousness. Because the soul knows no comparison, the soul only knows to bloom in its own way, in its own season. A flower blooming in winter is no less beautiful than one in spring. It just has a different time. But humans forget that, so we hurt ourselves with measurements that are never fair. The world today nurtures the ego with comparison. Social media is a feast of ideal images. Someone prettier, richer, happier. The more we look, the more we feel lacking. But Jung would ask, lacking what? Perhaps you lack not money, not opportunities, but connection to the deep self within, the part of you that never needed to be compared, only seen. That is when they realize that each soul has a different journey, called forth by different symbols, wounds, and missions. No one can live for another, nor compare one person's awakening journey to another's. One learns their lesson in 3 months. Another needs 30 years. But both are walking, both returning. For example, someone looks at you and says, "You're 30 and have nothing in hand." But if you live in awareness, you understand. I don't have nothing. I have myself. I am exploring my soul, living honestly, learning to love without possessing, and learning to let go without fear. And those things cannot be compared by numbers, by houses, by fame. Comparison is a subtle form of self-denial. Each time you compare yourself to others, you tell your soul, "We are not enough." But the soul does not understand enough or lacking. It only knows it is living, moving, experiencing. Jung once said, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases." When we stop trying to wear others' shoes, we can walk freely on our own path. The world will not stop comparing, but you can stop participating. You can choose to detach from that invisible race, not by leaving society, but by leaving the illusion that your worth depends on where you stand compared to others. In psychoanalysis, it is observed that when patients stop comparing, levels of anxiety, fear, and helplessness decrease markedly. Because comparison always comes with judgment, and judgment always creates division. When you stop judging yourself, you reunite. You become whole, no longer battling between I must and I am not enough. Ultimately, when you no longer compare, you realize there is no other at all, only countless forms of the same soul learning to understand itself. And you begin to see life lighter, people kinder, yourself deeper. No race left to win, no gap to fill, only the journey back to the deepest self, where you no longer ask, "Who am I in others' eyes?" but smile softly and whisper, "I am me, and that is enough." When the door closes, you will see life demands no more titles, but waits for you to answer a very old question. Do I dare live true to myself? Sustainable change is not noisy. It happens quietly, like a seed cracking open underground. No one witnesses, but the whole forest later owes gratitude to that moment. Forcing yourself each day, ultimately, is not to become a shiny version, but to be quiet enough to hear the call without comparison, without bargaining, without promising any reward beyond the feeling of right place. Consider each collision a guiding signal, each dream a map piece, each moment of honesty a step home. Don't wait for the world to permit. The only permission you need is from your own inner heart. Then one day you will realize, what transforms life is not a spectacular leap, but countless times you choose awakening over evasion. From there, life is no longer a puzzle to solve, but an invitation to be fully present, right here, right now, as the person you have quietly known yourself to be. Have you ever wondered why so many people ignite with blazing fire only to fizzle out after just a few days, while a select few quietly press on to the end and grasp what they dream of? The answer does not lie in luck or innate talent. It lies in something seemingly ordinary, yet fate-deciding: consistency. Not the kind of fervor that surges and then fades, but a silent, enduring discipline unbound by emotions. For Jung, consistency is not merely a habit. It is the ritual of the individuation process. Each day, we turn inward to confront the parts we evade: fear, procrastination, self-doubt, the whispers of the shadow murmuring, "Do it tomorrow." You cannot build a house on the gusts of inspiration, but you can build a life on small, repeated actions, punctual, true to your appointment with yourself. Each time you write one more paragraph, complete one more set, sit still for 5 more minutes, You are forging a new covenant with your inner self. I am reliable. That trust is not clamorous. It permeates the marrow, realigns the soul's stance, and lays each brick for a more mature ego. In the moment you are about to quit, there is a door that opens only for the one who knocks one more time. Do you dare try? In today's video, we will unravel the way to compel steadfastness, not through lashes, but through Jungian insight. Dialoguing with the shadow, activating archetypes, designing daily rituals so that one day you look back and realize you do not transform your life with a vaulting leap, but with ceaseless quiet footsteps. Part 1. Consistency is the ritual of individuation. In Carl Jung's psychology, humans are not born to become perfect, but to become whole. Yet the path to that wholeness does not lie in moments of elation or fleeting enlightenment. It is etched bit by bit through repeated actions, those instances when we persist, unseen by anyone, even as the mind urges us to stop and the soul feels exhausted. For Jung, consistency is not just discipline, it is the right of becoming, the heartbeat of the individuation process, the realm where the human gradually unifies the shattered fragments within to return to their true essence. Consistency is not doing something every day in a mechanical sense. It is a sacred act, a small action repeated with the clear awareness that I am training my soul to stand firm amid chaos. The one who meditates each morning does not merely sit in silence. He is training the mind to endure the emptiness he once always feared. The one who writes a few lines in a journal each evening is not simply recording. She is learning to gaze directly at her own truth without judgment. And the one who runs in the early mist is not merely building physical endurance, but forging in the ego the capacity to confront inner resistance, what Jung called the shadow. In the modern world, people often seek change through breakthroughs, a course, a book, an inspiring talk. But according to Jung, true change does not occur in the blaze of epiphany, but in those dark moments when we still carry on. Each time you choose action despite lacking inspiration, you are sending a signal to the unconscious that I am ready to take responsibility for myself. The unconscious, the deep layer holding instincts, collective memories, fears and potentials, only opens its door when it senses the steadfast will of consciousness. It does not grant power to the complainer, but to the one who perseveres. Jung once said, "No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." Consistency is precisely the act of rooting downward. Each day, we repeat the action not for the desire of results, but knowing that roots need time to find water. That is how we nourish the soul, even as the surface remains parched. Consistency is the quiet faith that all true transformation is unfolding at the depths, where the ordinary eye cannot see. When you maintain a habit long enough, what changes is not just the outcome, but the inner psychological structure. One who once easily surrendered gradually becomes one who can endure. One who once feared solitude learns to be alone without emptiness. Each repeated action is like an incantation. It reshapes the unconscious, alters how you perceive yourself. This is the essence of the individuation process. You do not create a new person. You awaken the true one within. In truth, many misunderstand consistency as forcing yourself to do something at all costs. They view it through the lens of control, of pressure. But Jung would say that forcing without awareness is violence to the soul. True consistency is a negotiation between consciousness and the unconscious. Each time you choose action, you are extending an invitation to your deeper self. I will not abandon you again. And gradually, the unconscious begins to collaborate, resistance weakens, and the inner self ceases to rebel. Consider an artist who practices every day. The first notes are wrong, the first sketches are clumsy, but steady repetition carries him beyond the psychological threshold that many dare not cross. The realm of boredom, dullness, meaninglessness. It is there that character is refined. In Jungian psychology, we call this the intermediate realm between the ego and the unconscious, where all true change occurs. When you can sit amid boredom without fleeing, you are entering the journey of transformation. The human mind is inherently a complex body of opposites: will and emotion, reason and instinct, light and shadow. Jung believed that all suffering arises from our inability to reconcile those opposing sides, and consistency is the bridge across the poles, the small daily action that helps us maintain balance between the two contrary pulls within the soul. You cannot destroy the shadow, but you can tame it through repeated action, the action that turns chaos into order. An everyday example. You want to become more confident. You read dozens of books, watch countless videos, yet still tremble when speaking before a crowd. Because that fear does not vanish through knowledge. It changes only when you show up regularly, speaking shakily the first time, hesitantly the second, still mistakenly the third. But you stand there. Through each such instance, the unconscious begins to understand. We are no longer threatened. The fear gradually dissolves, not because you are stronger, but because you have taught the instinct that we are safe in action. This is Jungian alchemy, the alchemy of the soul, where each repeated action transmutes weakness into strength, fear into confidence, shadow into light. For Jung, consistency is also the way we befriend time. The ego always craves immediate results, but the unconscious operates in a slow, profound rhythm. When we persist in a process, whether writing, learning, or healing, we are synchronizing our life's rhythm with that of the spirit. And that is why every soul master, from the meditator to the artist, has their own daily repeated ritual, not because they enjoy it, but because they understand. When you repeat an action with awareness, you are turning life into a sacred rite. Thus, consistency is no longer a burden or dry discipline. It is the quietest form of self-love, a love that makes no promises, no fanfare, manifesting only through presence. Like a mother patiently tending the frail child within her, each day we return to the small action, not for perfection, but for fidelity to the growth process. And in time we realize change does not come from a mighty thrust, but from 1,000 times we choose not to leave. And through that, we gradually become whole, not a flawless person, but one real enough, light enough, dark enough to live fully in this world. Part 2. Don't trust inspiration. Trust in symbols. At this point, we begin to glimpse a deeper truth. The path to our true self is not illuminated by inspiration. Inspiration is but a lightning flash in the sky, beautiful, brilliant, but fleeting. Symbols, according to Carl Jung, are the enduring torch burning in the night of the unconscious, guiding us through the mind's deepest recesses that reason cannot touch. Jung once said, "Whoever speaks in primordial images speaks with 1,000 voices." If inspiration is what makes us start, then symbols are what make us continue. For inspiration belongs to consciousness, arising from what we see, hear, and admire. But symbols belong to the collective unconscious, that deeper psychological realm where humanity stores primordial images. The mother, the father, the hero, the trickster, the wise old man. They are living energies, soul structures that have existed since humans first dreamed. When you live by inspiration, you act like a small sail on the sea of moods, full when the wind is favorable, limp when it turns against you. Today the sky is blue, your heart buoyant. You move forward. Tomorrow rain falls, chill seeps into your bones. You halt. But when you live by symbols, you are no longer a sail at the wind's mercy, but the one gripping the helm. Symbols do not shift with the world's weather. They pulse with the silent lifeblood within you. They are the soul's compass, not leading you to the easiest place, but to the one most essential for your growth. Imagine this. You begin writing a book, and in the early days, inspiration blazes. You fill pages, ideas flow. But then one morning, you sit down, empty. Not a single line emerges. Inspiration has deserted you. Most people stop here, believing this isn't the right time, or perhaps I lack the talent. But for Jung, this is precisely the moment the soul is testing you. Inspiration's departure is not a sign of failure, but an invitation from the unconscious, compelling you to seek a deeper drive, not from excitement, but from meaning. In Jungian psychology, symbols are not mere decorations, but bridges between consciousness and the unconscious. When we align with a symbol, such as the hero archetype, we give the unconscious a form through which to converse with us. The hero within you does not arise from interest, but from the soul's survival yearning, the part that strives upward despite fear, despite wounds. Each time you rise to work despite fatigue, that is the hero acting through you. And strangely, the more you act in accordance with the symbol, the more inspiration returns, but at a deeper level, not a superficial spark, but the smoldering fire of meaning. Look to the real world, an athlete training daily in solitude, an artist persisting in creation despite no recognition, a single mother continuing to raise her child despite exhaustion. They do not do it for inspiration. They do it because a living symbol is at work within them. The athlete is guided by the symbol of the warrior, the artist sustained by the creator, and the mother, who is the embodiment of the great mother archetype, the energy that preserves and nurtures life against all odds. Inspiration may dissolve, but symbols never die. They are the heartbeat of the collective soul, and each time we touch them, we connect to a force greater than ourselves. Jung realized that those prone to discouragement, to abandonment, often live severed from their symbols. They live by the whims of the ego, not the soul's rhythm. Inspiration launches them, but without symbols, they do not know where they are headed. And when disoriented, they fall into the loop of starting and quitting, an unconscious psychological pattern. Only when they discover the symbol of their journey, whether teacher, creator, warrior, or healer, do they find enduring motivation from within. A relatable example. Some choose meditation not out of curiosity, but because the call of the wise old man echoes within them, the symbol of stillness and inner wisdom. At first, they meditate to calm the mind or reduce stress. But gradually, meditation becomes ritual, not for efficacy, but because it is how their soul dialogues with itself. They need no inspiration to meditate, for meditation is not a task to do, but a way to live. Thus, those who live by symbols, creators, meditators, or those with profound ideals always carry a steadfast light in their eyes, a light not from emotion, but from the quiet certainty of being on the right path. Jung once said that when a person loses their guiding symbol, they fall into an existential crisis. That is when everything loses meaning. Work, success, relationships, all empty. Humans cannot live on logic or emotion alone. They need an image to believe in, to live for. That is the function of the symbol. It does not merely explain the world. It gives our life a reason to continue. So when you seek steadfastness, do not ask, "How can I get more inspiration?" Ask, "Which symbol is guiding me?" Are you living as the hero, healing as the mother, or withdrawing as the trickster? Every repeated behavior stems from an inner symbol. When you identify it, you will understand that consistency is not coercion, but a right honoring the living symbol within you. And if right now some image stirs faintly within you, a symbol, an archetype, a figure your soul recognizes, write it down. Share it with me in the comments as a way for your soul to speak. Sometimes, naming the symbol is the first step of the return journey. And then, one day you will realize the people you admire, creators, athletes, philosophers, are no more special than you. They simply choose to trust in symbols, not fleeting emotions. When you do the same, your smallest actions, clearing your desk, writing a journal line, or sitting still for 5 minutes in silence, become sacred rituals. You no longer live by inspiration, but by the symbol that shapes your soul. And in that fidelity, you will witness a miracle unfold. Inspiration returns, but no longer as a flickering flame, but as a steady, enduring glow, lighting your path forever unquenched. Part 3. Consistency is action from within, independent of external circumstances. Number 1. Distinguishing between external discipline and inner consistency. There is a very subtle yet exceedingly common confusion in the modern world. People assume that discipline and consistency are one and the same. They see successful individuals rising early, working steadfastly, adhering to their routines, and conclude, "I need to build discipline." But according to Carl Jung's vision, that is merely the surface of the story. The discipline we often praise, waking at 5 a.m., running 10 kilometers each morning, journaling every evening, is largely external. Actions born from pressure, from fear, from the need for control. Inner consistency, however, belongs to a deeper layer. It is action flowing naturally from inner order, from the harmony between consciousness and soul. Jung never advised people to force themselves to become better. He understood that forcing without awareness only breeds resistance, and that resistance, if suppressed long enough, will erupt as powerfully as an underground storm. One might maintain ironclad discipline for 6 months, but if the root of that action stems from fear of failure, from an obsession with recognition, then one day the entire system will collapse. At that point, they lose not only motivation, but also faith in themselves. For what they built was not rooted in fidelity to their essence, but in submission to the ego. Imagine 2 people meditating each morning. The first does it out of discipline because he believes it is what one should do, a habit of the successful. He watches the clock, controls every minute, every breath, forcing the mind to quiet. But in that quiet, his mind is full of tension, like a string stretched too taut. The second also sits, but not out of compulsion. He sits to return and listen to himself. If the mind wanders, he does not try to extinguish it. He simply observes. One is trying to bend the soul to a mold. The other is listening for the soul to adjust its own rhythm. The outward results may look the same, but the psychological quality is entirely different. External discipline always begins with "I must," while inner consistency begins with "I choose." I must is the voice of the ego, the part that always seeks to control, measure, and prove. I choose is the voice of mature consciousness, where one acts not out of fear, but in harmony with inner meaning. External discipline makes you feel surveilled, as if living in an iron-barred prison named goals. Inner consistency makes you feel free, even as your actions follow a framework. For that frame does not confine you, it supports you. Jung once said, "What you resist persists." When you force yourself to do something through the power of will, you are resisting a part of yourself. That part, the shadow, will rebel, whispering, "I'm tired. I don't want to. Maybe it's not worth it anymore." And then, you slide back into guilt, shame, disappointment. But if you act from inner consistency, you do not need to suppress the shadow. You bring it into dialogue. "I know you're afraid, but we will do this anyway, not to force you, but to grow together." In that case, your action is no longer a battle, but a rite of reconciliation. Inner consistency, therefore, cannot be forged like one forges muscle. It does not come from cold discipline, but from a profound understanding of human nature. Think of a farmer. He cannot command the plant to grow, but he can tend the soil, water it, and maintain a suitable environment. The plant will grow on its own. Inner consistency is the same. You cannot command yourself to become stable, but you can nurture that stability by understanding what you are doing it for whom, and which part of yourself needs it. Another example. Someone trains physically only to force the body into the mold society deems perfect. They push to exhaustion, eat according to a rigid plan, and call it self-discipline. But you can see in their eyes that it is not vitality, but fear incarnate as failure. In contrast, another train is a ritual of dialogue with the body. Each movement is a thank you, each drop of sweat a covenant with life. They do not need to strive to maintain it, for it has become a natural part of them. This is the difference between discipline from the head and consistency from the soul. It is telling that modern society champions external discipline, but few teach us how to cultivate inner consistency. We are taught to be productive, to optimize, to conquer ourselves, forgetting that no one can conquer themselves without losing a part of the soul in the process. Jung warned that those too busy forging the ego will soon be devoured by the shadow they neglect. Discipline is not wrong, but if used to evade inner dialogue, it only creates a glossy shell concealing the emptiness beneath. Inner consistency, in contrast, is the path of honesty. It requires you to dare see even the weak, lazy, wounded parts within, without denying them. When you work, study, or train, not to prove yourself, but to care for that human part in you, each action becomes a step of healing. And the endurance then is no longer burdensome, but carries the warmth of acceptance. One with external discipline is like a tightrope walker, always tense for fear of falling. One with inner consistency is like someone walking on solid ground, steady, unhurried but sure, because they know that ground is theirs. and that ground is the unified soul. When you understand and practice inner consistency, you will see. You no longer need motivational slogans, no longer need promises to try harder. For in the silence, there is a force more enduring than inspiration, stronger than will, the living energy arising from the unity of ego and soul. Then, action is no longer a burden, but a profound joy. And you will understand that true discipline is not chains, but the inner freedom forged from love and understanding. Number 2. Consistency is action without witnesses. There is a quiet power that Jung would call the energy of the mature soul, the ability to continue acting even when no one sees, no one applauds, no one pats you on the back in praise. When you still do what is right in silence, when you need no spotlight of recognition to illuminate your journey, when you stand in the shadows yet keep the lamp burning, that is when you are truly consistent. In Jung's psychology, every person carries within a need to be witnessed, to be seen, heard, recognized as a being of value. From childhood, we are nurtured by others' gazes, a parent's eyes when we are good, a teacher's when we score high, the crowd's when we perform well. Gradually, our unconscious learns to tie self-worth to external gazes. But precisely because of this, when that gaze vanishes, we begin to falter. When no one knows we are trying, we wonder, is this even worth it? And that is when consistency is truly tested. One with superficial discipline often persists only when watched, like an athlete training only with the coach present, or an employee performing well only under the boss's eye. But one with inner consistency acts as if the observing gaze resides within. They need no one else to see, for they see themselves. Jung called this the unity of ego and soul, a state in which one no longer acts to prove, but to express true nature. Imagine you are in a windowless room, no one knowing what you are doing. If you still choose to keep writing, keep learning, keep tending your work with the same respect as if an audience were there, then you are touching the deepest honesty of the soul. Jung believed that action without witnesses is the test of integrity, for it measures not behavior, but essence. In today's social media world, where every action can become content, quiet consistency is rare. People record workouts, post desk photos, and flaunt every milestone of effort. There is nothing wrong with sharing, but our unconscious gradually programs itself. If no one sees, then it is not worth doing. That is a modern tragedy. Jung would say, this is when the ego seizes control from the soul. The ego needs an audience to affirm its existence. The soul does not. The soul needs only the honesty of the action. Try recalling what truly changed your life. It did not happen on stage, but in silent moments. A night you decide to stop procrastinating and finish the unfinished chapter. A morning you choose to rise early, not letting the alarm ring a second time. No one knows, no one records it. But it is precisely those unseen moments that shape your entire being. Jung believed that all spiritual transformation occurs in the shadow realm of consciousness, where there are no lights, no audience, only the honesty and courage of a soul growing. Consistency without witnesses is also how you free yourself from the slavery of image. When you act only to be seen by others, you are playing the role of the good person, the archetype Jung described as the social mask we wear to be accepted. But behind that mask is the shadow, the part we deny, fear, or are not yet ready to expose. Only when you dare to act in silence do you truly remove that mask. For silence does not allow performance. It accepts only truth. You may see quiet heroes helping others without anyone knowing. They do not take photos, do not recount, do not need thanks. Their kindness is not a planned media campaign, but the instinct of a soul that has touched wholeness. They do not do it to be called good. They do it because goodness is a natural part of them, like breath, radiating without demanding credit. That is the pinnacle of inner consistency, where action becomes a natural expression of essence, and the soul is the only witness. In contrast, you may see not a few celebrities doing charity with a full film crew, lights and perfect angles. They hand out rice to the poor, but hold a microphone in the other hand. They aid a hardship case, but do not forget to tag the sponsoring brand. They speak of compassion in meticulously lit frames. At the Jungian psychological level, this is not merely a PR stunt, but the behavior of an ego starving for recognition. The act of doing good, inherently a soulful action, outward without expectation of return, is distorted when filtered through the ego's lens. It becomes a moral performance, where one dons the mask of the savior. However, note that not every charitable act is displayed. The question Jung poses is, who is acting within them at that moment, the persona needing to be seen, or the soul wanting to be true? Depth psychology indicates that when we act only to be seen, we are compensating for a past lack of recognition. Perhaps the inner child once tried to earn parental praise, to be loved. But in adulthood, if we still act on that pattern, we remain that child. Only now, the audience is the world. Jung called this the father-mother complex. And only when we dare to act without needing to be witnessed do we truly mature and become our own parent. Consistency, therefore, is the art of discretion. The consistent person knows that the value of doing lies not in who witnesses it, but in whether you are honest with your own essence. And perhaps that is the highest form of freedom. For when you no longer need anyone to see you to continue, you have escaped the cage of recognition. You act not to be remembered, but because it is true to you. Like a seed quietly germinating in the soil, needing no applause from the sky, only enough light to live. Then, each small action, each silent step of yours, becomes a soul's prayer to itself. I will be true to my journey, even when no one knows I am on it. Part 4. Each small action is a step closer to the self. Before moving to the final part, where we will touch on the heart of this journey, I want to take a moment to thank you. Thank you for quietly walking with me through each layer of the psyche, each profound dialogue between human and soul. Amid the clamor of countless noisy sounds in the world, you still choose to stay, to listen, to explore yourself. That alone is an act brimming with courage. The path ahead is just one more stretch, but it is the convergence of all we have unveiled. If something has touched you, a thought, an emotion, or simply a small stillness amid the chaos, leave a sign for me that you are still here with a like, a subscribe button to let this journey continue. From here, the self begins to speak, not through grand events, but through actions so subtle that we often overlook them. The way we breathe, place hands on the keyboard, step out of bed, or close a day. It is precisely in that micro-rhythm that the soul is quietly rewriting us, bit by bit. Each morning, instead of chasing inspiration, begin with 3 deliberate breaths. As you inhale, you acknowledge the body. As you hold, you listen to the emotion. As you exhale, you set a small intention, a simple phrase, enough to evoke, "Today, I am present." Those seemingly simple 3 breaths are the first door leading you back to yourself. They do not merely soothe the mind, but realign the day's direction, not outward, but inward. When facing a task you habitually procrastinate on, do not wait for inspiration to knock. Open a gentle path. When the clock strikes 9, I begin. The first minute is always the hardest, but also the most crucial. For what the unconscious needs is not a grand vow, but a small signal that we are still moving forward. Once you start, the natural flow will handle the rest. Sound, too, can become a guiding ritual. Choose one piece of music to open your work and a short phrase to close it. Each time that sound arises, the brain understands you are leaving the outer world to return to the inner realm. Gradually, that repetition creates a personal rhythm, a steady cadence in which the soul can dwell. When emotions surge, instead of suppressing or explaining them, grant them a brief pause. Just 90 seconds. Place a hand on your chest and ask softly, "What am I protecting?" No need to find an answer. Just stay. In that moment, you are teaching the unconscious that you are safe. And when the unconscious believes that, it ceases to rebel to be seen. There are times when the shadow within you rises, envy, sadness, a craving for recognition. Do not chase it away. Give it a small space to breathe, a container to exist. Write in your journal, "I feel tired, I feel envious, but I am still here." Just 3 sentences, enough for the vulnerable part in you to sense it is not abandoned. And when acknowledged, it will no longer seek to destroy. Before starting work, you might write a small promise, simple but clear. 10 a.m., 10:30 a.m. Edit the draft. No social media. Write it by hand, as if consciousness and unconscious are signing the commitment together. No need for grand goals, just a boundary small enough for the soul to focus. If you are a dreamer, do not rush to interpret. Upon waking, record just one image, a staircase, a wave, or a face. During the day, when you feel adrift, glance back at that image and ask, "Which step do I need to take today?" In doing so, you allow consciousness and unconscious to begin conversing. The dream ceases to be vague, becoming a subtle map guiding you aright. When weary, do not strive to prove. Step onto the balcony, take a deep breath, and let your eyes gaze afar. 2 minutes of stillness can shift your entire inner state. Steadfastness is not running endlessly, but knowing when to pause to keep the inner flame from extinguishing. Before each decision, listen to 3 simple questions. Does it serve my long journey? What is the smallest step I can take? When you answer them, you no longer act from an ego seeking control, but from the self seeking to live truly. And each time you fulfill what you promised, do not forget to reward yourself with a warm moment. Sip tea, open the window to let light flood in, or simply place a hand on your chest and whisper, "I see you." Those small joys nourish endurance. They teach the unconscious that steadfastness is not coercion, but a form of love. None of the rituals here is grandiose, but the silent repetition of those small things is enough to transform your entire inner structure. No fireworks, no applause, just a fresh stillness radiating from within the flesh. You realize you have stood where you need to be, not at the destination, but at the center of the journey. There, the self is no longer